Hello and welcome everyone to the Bare Bones Fishing YouTube channel. My name is Mike. Thank you very much for tuning in. So in this episode today, I'm going to show you how I make a walleye chowder. And you can see on this day that I made the recording, we had a little bit of a dreary, cold, wet and rainy day. Perfect day for like a chowder. Before I started cooking, was enjoying a little bit of coffee in a new mug from my merch store. If you'd like to take a look at any of the new merchandise I have, you can find it in the store link below. So for this recipe, I like to use this cast iron crock pot that I have, and it's really nice and heavy, and it really distributes the heat and keeps the heat well. And so here you can see I'm starting to get everything prepared. So I've got some olive oil, some salt, some celery, a couple of cloves of garlic, some onion, a pack of bacon, and then I've also got potatoes. And then inside the fridge, I still have the fish. Now, I got this recipe from my wonderful mother-in-law, and she generally includes another ingredient here that I'm going to show right there, a little bit of clam juice, and unfortunately the bottle that we had expired, so I decided to go against putting any of that in there, but that definitely helps add a little flavor. So if you're wanting to make this recipe, I would highly suggest getting that. Now I'm calling this a chowder, but it probably doesn't follow the exact definition of what a chowder is. Either way, it's a really thick soup or a thin stew that's made with walleye and potatoes essentially, and it's a cream based. So that's why I'm calling it a chowder pretty much, is because it's cream based. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fry up the bacon. We're going to get the bacon nice and browned. And so I'm going to be cutting these up into about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/2 inch pieces. And with a little bit of olive oil in the crock pot, I will get these all nice and browned. And while the bacon starts to cook, this is when I start to get all of the other items prepped. So here, I'm going to chop an onion. You'll notice that I've got 3 on the counter. I only actually ended up using 1. They were kind of small, that's why I pulled a few out. But after I chopped up the 1 onion, I realized that that was going to be enough for this amount of fish that I was using. Next, we diced up the celery. And with the celery, I really want to make sure to cut it into small pieces. And it's actually the same thing with the onion. I really don't want any of these vegetables to be in giant chunks. I kind of want them to cook away essentially. So you get the flavor, but you don't get these giant pieces of, onion as well as celery. So if you're cutting these up, make sure to cut them up nice and small. And next up, we're getting the garlic prepped. You'll notice that I put the garlic in a separate bowl because I don't want the garlic to be cooking at the same time as the onions and celery. I'm going to cook the onions and celery first, let them cook down a bit, and then I'll add the garlic so it doesn't burn. So now that I have all my mise en place, or my ingredients ready, I focus my attention on getting that bacon done. So as soon as it's nice and browned, I'm going to remove the bacon from the pot, and I'm going to put it on a plate with some paper towel just to absorb some of the grease that comes with it. So once I remove the bacon from the pot, I put the excess grease in a separate bowl so that I can use it later on if need be. Be sure to leave a little bit of grease in the pot so that you can use it to cook up the onions, celery, and garlic. Alright, so now we're going to add the onions and celery to the pot in order to start cooking them down. I guess we're sauteing them a little bit, so we're just trying to soften them up. I generally will turn down the heat at this point, so usually I cook the bacon on a medium-high heat. At this point, I'll put it down to more of a medium-low heat just to really sweat these vegetables out and let them cook down nice and slow, get some really good color on them. And then after about 5 minutes or so, I'll then add the garlic and let the garlic start to cook with the vegetables as well. And so while those vegetables are sauteing, now this is the time where I'm going to get the fish prepped. So you'll notice that I have a little tag of skin on there still because for transportation I leave on that little piece of skin. So I get that removed, And then I'm using here the zipper method, if you will, just getting rid of those pin bones in the middle. So now my fillets are perfectly boneless. So for this recipe, I ended up using 12 fillets, so from 6 fish, okay? Now these were from smaller fish, and so that's why I decided to use that many. Honestly, if you're catching, you know, fish that are 25 plus inches and you've got these giant fillets, you could probably get away with only using maybe 3, okay? But anyways, I wanted this to be pretty meaty, so I ended up putting in quite a bit of walleye. So I cut the chunks of fish into about 1-inch squares or 1-inch cubes, and the reason for that is that allows the walleye to kind of maintain its integrity a little bit, so it doesn't just kind of fall apart as the chowder cooks. So once the vegetables are nicely cooked down, I take them out of the pot and put them into a bowl. And so at this point, what I do is I add a little bit of that bacon grease back into the crock pot, and then I add the fish to it. And so once again, I'm cooking this on a medium low, or medium to medium low heat. And this is just gonna start getting the walleye cooking just a little bit, maybe adding a little bit of color as well. So you can see here, I'll add some of that bacon grease that we saved from before. Delicious. So essentially this component here is just to give a little bit of color to the walleye before we start putting everything together. So at this point I start getting the potatoes ready, and I also realized as I was editing this video that I had forgotten to include the video where I start adding the cream and milk to the broth, or as a broth. So instead of giving you the exact amount that I used, all you want to do is essentially make sure that everything is submerged in the broth. And so what I do is I will add just enough. In this case, I used half of the broth was milk and half of the broth was half and half cream. And so I just used enough to cover all of the items that are in this chowder. And so what you end up with in the end is, you know, a really good ratio of vegetables and meat to broth. So it's not, there's not tons and tons of just watery broth. It's actually quite a hearty chowder in the end. So like I said, instead of using an exact measurement, just make sure that you barely cover everything that's in the pot with the cream-based products that you use, whatever that might be. If all you have is milk, just use milk. But like I said, adding cream is usually ideal because it makes it just a little bit more richer. So generally speaking, I'll add anywhere between 2 to 3 potatoes for every 2 fillets of fish that I use. And so for every fish that I put in this chowder, I'll add 2 or 3 potatoes. Now you can adjust that, obviously, add more, add less. Doesn't really matter, whatever your tastes are. But I really like a hearty chowder, and so that's why I add that many potatoes for every bit of fish that is in there. And so at this point, I add, you know, I start adjusting the seasoning. I put in some garlic powder. I also added a little bit of paprika, and I adjusted the salt content as well. And so at this point though, everything is in the pot now, ready to go. And so once I adjust the flavoring, then I just put it on a very low simmer, and I essentially just go until the potatoes are cooked, and then your chowder is ready. Other things that we might add to the chowder are frozen corn and peas at this point, and so that is something else that you could add. Honestly, just kind of make it your own. This is just really this is a good base, but I mean, you know, whatever you think would bring it up a notch, feel free to change this recipe. But I feel like this is a really good base. Now, some of you might be wondering why we didn't put the bacon in the pot at this point in time. Well, the reason why is because my kids actually really like the bacon crispy, and so what we do is we generally keep that on the side and then put the bacon on top. And so there's the finished product. Walleye chowder topped with crispy bacon bits. Also, a really nice addition is some type of hot sauce on top, just a couple of little shots. That always, you know, brings it up a notch. But anyway, there you have it. Hope you enjoy it. Please let me know if there's any adjustments I should make to this recipe. Like I said, this is what I've used and I enjoy, but I'm all ears for any changes. Anyway, hope all is well, and I'll catch you on the next one.